Back to the Future. Could it actually happen with a real time machine? That's tonight's IDEA, our series on new ideas.
Hello everyone. What I will tell you today will change your whole worldview and the way of thinking.
Actual time traveler from the year 2030?
Yeah. What I'm going to tell you will be very hard to believe for many people, but all I ask is for you, please, hear what I have to say.
I could build a time machine that I could go back and see him again and tell him what was going to happen. You know, maybe save his life.
Hey, the new Bruce Willis movie Looper opens this weekend, and in which Willis's character is sent back in time to kill himself.
Time travel has always been the stuff of dreams and wild imagination, fueling countless stories of daring leaps through time. But what if it's more than just fantasy? What if time travel already exists, tucked away in the shadows, hidden from the public eye? Join us as we dive into a world where the lines between reality and science fiction start to blur, and the impossible begins to feel just a bit more possible. Here are some mysterious cases of time travel that simply can't be explained. Mike, Madman, Markham. Get ready, because we're starting with a truly mysterious and puzzling story. Meet Mike Markham, also known as Madman Mike. Mike wasn't just any inventor. He was a 21-year-old electrical engineering student in the mid-90s with a wild idea: build a time machine, travel to the future, and get the winning lottery numbers. Who wouldn't want an easy way to get rich, right? Mike's journey into the weird began when he started experimenting with a Jacob's ladder, a device that looked more like a science project gone wrong than a time machine. But here's where it gets really strange. Mike claimed that one day, while testing his device, he threw a metal screw into the swirling energy it created. To his surprise, the screw disappeared and then reappeared a few feet away. Was the screw time traveling, or did Mike just lose track of it? Mike was sure it was time travel. Of course, to make his experiments bigger and better, Mike needed more power, a lot more power. So, what did our mad scientist do? He borrowed some large transformers from a local power station without asking. The key word here is without asking. As you can guess, this didn't end well. A blackout hit the neighborhood and Mike got arrested. When he explained his time machine plan to the judge probably thought Mike was more crazy than a genius and sent him to jail for a few months. After he was released, Mike became a bit of a local celebrity, especially after appearing on Art Bell's radio show where he talked about building a full-size time machine, one big enough for him to use. People started donating money to help him. After all, who wouldn't want to be part of a crazy invention like that? Then, in 1997, just as Mike was about to test his machine, he disappeared. Gone. Did he succeed and end up in the future or the past? No one knows for sure. But here's where the story takes a strange turn. A caller on the radio show mentioned a weird story from the 1930s. Police had found a dead man on a beach in California, crushed inside a strange metal tube. And get this, Mike had once said that if he traveled through time, he would only take his cell phone with him. Well, the man in the 1930s had a mysterious device with him that looked a lot like a cell phone. Coincidence? Maybe, but it sure makes you think. And just when you thought the story couldn't get any stranger, in 2022, someone claiming to be Mike appeared online, saying he wasn't dead in the 1930s. He was even interviewed by a local radio station in 2015. But here's the twist, this person didn't provide any proof that he was really Mike, or explain where he had been all these years. So, did Madman Mike really build a time machine, or is this just another strange chapter in his story? Whatever the truth is, Mike's tale remains a mystery that keeps people guessing. Time-traveling stock trader. Mike Markham wanted to jump ahead and win the lottery, but Andrew Carlson had a different plan, one that turned $800 into $350 million in just 2 weeks. The catch? He claimed he did it by traveling back in time from the year 2256, armed with insider knowledge of future stock market events or past stock market events if he was really from the future. The story goes that in 2003, Carlson was arrested by the FBI for what seemed to be the most unbelievable case of insider trading ever. When the authorities started questioning him, Carlson didn't break a sweat. Instead, he told them a wild story about time travel. He even offered to reveal the location of Osama bin Laden and the cure for AIDS if they let him go. All he wanted was to return to his time machine and get back to the future, leaving our timeline behind. Of course, the FBI didn't believe a word of it. But here's where things get interesting. Some mysterious person posted $1 million bail for Carlson, and when it was time for him to appear in court, he vanished, just like that, gone as mysteriously as he had appeared. There were no records of his life before December 2002, and after he skipped the hearing, he disappeared without a trace. But it gets even more curious. The story of Carlson's strange adventure made its way into mainstream newspapers. Then, the SEC stepped in, saying the whole story came from Weekly World News, a satirical newspaper famous for making up crazy stories. But think about it. If you were a time traveler and got caught, how would you cover your tracks? Maybe you'd go back in time and plant a story in a satirical newspaper, turning what could have been a serious investigation into a joke. Sure, this theory has some big gaps, but it's fun to think about, isn't it? Was Carlson a fraud, a time traveler who pulled off the ultimate disappearing act, or just a character made up by a satirical newspaper? The truth might be lost in time. Time travel or optical illusion? The mystery of cell phones and history. Time traveling to get rich sounds like a solid plan, but building a time machine? That seems like the harder route. Still, the internet is buzzing with theories and evidence of time travelers, and one of the biggest giveaways? Cell phones. Just like Mike Markham, other supposed time travelers also seem to have a strange obsession with bringing their cell phones into the past. Let's start with one of the most talked about sightings. This is a video from 1938 outside a DuPont factory in Massachusetts. People are casually walking out after their shifts, but one woman stands out. Take a close look. She appears to be chatting on a cell phone. Yes, you heard that right. A cell phone in 1938. Who could she have possibly been talking to? Next up, there's a painting by Ferdinand Georg Waldmüller from 1860. Now, why are we talking about a painting from 1860? Well, if you look closely at the woman in the painting, she seems to be walking through a scenic landscape with her eyes glued to something that looks a lot like a smartphone. A smartphone in 1860? Some say it's just a prayer book, but others are convinced it's a phone. And if that's not strange enough, how about an iPhone spotted in a 1670 painting by Peter de Hoek? This painting shows a cozy domestic scene, but if you look closely, it seems like the man is handing a woman something that looks like an iPhone. Even Apple's CEO Tim Cook was puzzled when he saw it. He joked that he wasn't so sure anymore if Apple really invented the iPhone, but it doesn't stop with paintings. In 1928, during the premiere of Charlie Chaplin's The Circus, a mysterious woman was caught on film holding something up to her ear. Take a look for yourself. Doesn't it look like she's talking on a cell phone? Maybe she's a time-traveling fan who just couldn't resist making a call. Perhaps she was telling her friend about the exciting premiere. And honestly, I wouldn't blame her. If I were there, I'd probably do the same. But that raises the question, did her friend time travel too? Now, let's jump to 1962 when Brazil won the Football World Cup against Czechoslovakia. In this iconic photo of Brazilian player Garrincha lifting the cup, there's something unusual in the background. Amidst the celebration, a photographer seems to be snapping pictures with a flip phone, a device that wouldn't be invented for another 27 years. How did a flip phone end up in this historic moment? And let's go back another 19 years to 1943. Here's a photo from Tone Beach in Newquay, Cornwall. Look at the man in the center. Doesn't it look like he's staring at his phone? Some might argue it's not that convincing, but then there's this photo from World War II in Reykjavik, Iceland. In the middle of a crowd of soldiers and locals, one man appears to be chatting away on a mobile device. These stories are fascinating, but they raise a big question. How could these people be using cell phones before they were even invented? Of course, skeptics will say that the 1938 woman might have just been using some kind of hearing aid, or that the strange objects in the paintings are just misinterpretations of everyday items. But what if, just what if, these are real time travelers who accidentally let their gadgets slip into the past? It's a thought that's hard to ignore, isn't it? The pilot who flew into the future. This next story might just blow your mind. In 1935, RAF pilot Victor Goddard had an experience that would make even the biggest skeptics raise an eyebrow. Picture this. Goddard was on a routine flight from Edinburgh to his home base in Andover, England, when he decided to take a little detour over the Drem airfield in Scotland. Now, this wasn't your average airfield. It had been abandoned since World War I, with hangars falling apart and weeds taking over like they owned the place. As Goddard flew over the sad-looking airstrip, a sudden storm hit out of nowhere, like the weather was having a bad day. The sky turned into a swirling mess of brown and yellow clouds, and Goddard was struggling to keep his plane steady. But then, just as quickly as the storm appeared, it vanished, and Goddard found himself flying under bright, clear skies. Here's where it gets weird. When he looked down, the Drem airfield wasn't abandoned anymore. It was alive and kicking. The hangars looked brand new, and the place was buzzing with activity. 4 planes were on the ground, but these weren't just any planes. They were painted a bright yellow, a color the RAF didn't even use in 1935. And to top it off, one of the planes was a monoplane, which the RAF wouldn't introduce for a few more years. As if that wasn't enough to make him question reality, the mechanics on the ground were wearing blue overalls instead of the usual brown RAF uniforms. Before Goddard could process what he was seeing, the storm came back like a bad sequel, and he found himself flying back over familiar skies in Andover. But here's the kicker. The Drem airfield he saw didn't exist in 1935, but by 1939 it did. The RAF started painting their planes yellow, introduced the monoplane, and switched to blue uniforms, just like Goddard had witnessed. Talk about a sneak peek into the future. So what happened to Victor Goddard that day? Did he accidentally time travel, or was his mind playing tricks on him? The details of his story match up so perfectly with future events that it's hard to just call it a daydream. Could it be that Goddard took a brief, unplanned trip through time, or was it all just a strange illusion? In the world of mysterious time travel tales, this one is definitely right there at the top. Maybe time travel isn't something we control. Maybe it just happens when the past, present, and future collide. What do you think? The Swiss watch found in a 400-year-old tomb. Imagine this. It's 2008, and archaeologists in southern China are carrying out what seems like a routine excavation of a 400-year-old sealed Ming Dynasty tomb. Everything's going as planned until something unexpected happens. As the team carefully works to unearth a coffin, a small metallic object suddenly falls to the ground. The sound it makes isn't the dull thud of something ancient. No, it's more like the clink of something modern. Curious, they pick it up, dust it off, and what's this? It's a tiny mud-encrusted watch attached to a ring, and if that's not strange enough, the word Swiss is engraved on the back, in a tomb sealed for centuries. This little discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological world and beyond. A Swiss ring watch inside a Ming Dynasty tomb. That's the kind of thing that makes you do a double take. How could something from at least the 19th century with Swiss engraved on it, a modern term, end up in a tomb that's been locked up since the 1600s? The most plausible answer, if you're like me, is that this is proof of time travel. Maybe some future traveler got a little too careless and left their watch behind. The mystery gets even juicier when you consider the lack of solid details about the whole discovery. The exact location of the tomb, the names of the archaeologists, and even the documentary that was supposedly being filmed at the time are all wrapped in secrecy. So, what do you make of this bizarre find? Was it an elaborate prank, a freaky coincidence, or the ultimate proof that time travel is more than just a wild fantasy? The Swiss ring watch, buried in the soil of a Ming Dynasty tomb, remains one of the most puzzling and out-of-place artifacts ever discovered. In the vast world of time travel mysteries, this one definitely stands out. Shiny, mysterious, and completely unexplainable. The 1940s hipster. Next up is a photo from 1941. The South Fork Bridge in British Columbia, Canada was reopening. This black and white photo capturing the moment shows a crowd of people dressed exactly as you'd expect. Tailored suits, formal hats, and sturdy overcoats. But wait, there is one man who stands out. Right in the middle of all these classic looks, there's a guy who looks like he just rolled out of a modern-day streetwear store. This hipster time traveler of ours is wearing a dark printed t-shirt, sunglasses, and a hooded zip-up jacket. Basically the kind of outfit that screams 21st century. Oh, and let's not forget he's holding what seems to be a small, portable camera in 1941. When the Barlawn Pioneer Museum digitized and shared this photo online in 2010, it didn't take long for the internet to collectively raise an eyebrow. How did this dude, looking like he's ready for a casual day out in 2023, end up in a photo from 1941? Naturally, some folks jumped on the time travel bandwagon, declaring this guy the ultimate proof that time travelers are among us. I mean, he's got the look down, right? On the flip side, the skeptics rolled their eyes, saying it's probably just a clever hoax. Maybe some sneaky Photoshop magic. But here's the kicker, there's no evidence that the image has been tampered with, and the museum swears up and down that the photo is 100% legit. So, what's the deal? Is this hipster a real time traveler who couldn't resist popping into the past for a quick photo op, or is it all just a big misunderstanding? The hipster time traveler has become one of the most talked about mysteries in the world of time travel. Whether he's a true visitor from another time or just a fashion icon ahead of his era, one thing's for sure. This photo keeps us all guessing and wondering what's really possible. Project Pegasus, the CIA's secret time travel program.
Hey, the new Bruce Willis movie Looper opens this weekend, and in which Willis's character is sent back in time to kill himself. Well, most scientists say time travel isn't possible.
But a Washington attorney claims he's done it dozens of times as part of a secret Cold War project.
Meet Andrew Basiago, a man whose claims are so wild they make the most out there conspiracy theories sound like bedtime stories. Basiago isn't your run-of-the-mill conspiracy theorist. No, he insists that as a child in the late 1960s, he was recruited by the CIA for Project Pegasus, a top-secret program that supposedly cracked the code on time travel and teleportation. And according to him, they didn't just crack it, they shattered it. Basiago claims he's traveled to some of the most pivotal moments in history, like Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and even Lincoln's assassination. But wait, there's more. He also says that in the early 1980s, he took a little detour to Mars. And who was his space buddy on this interplanetary adventure? None other than a 19-year-old Barack Obama. Yes, you heard that right. Basiago says he and the young Obama were hopping around the Red Planet, courtesy of CIA teleportation tech. According to Basiago, Project Pegasus was a Cold War-era initiative funded by the US government, built on hidden technologies supposedly found in Nikola Tesla's papers. These technologies allegedly allowed participants to travel through time using something called radiant energy and even zip through wormholes. Basiago describes stepping into a machine that would surround him in a cloud of plasma, and next thing he knew, he was in the 19th century, standing as a 7-year-old boy just outside Gettysburg. He even claims to have photographic evidence. He claims that this boy dressed as a Union bugler at the historic event is him. Now, Basiago's tales are so outlandish that they stretch the limits of imagination. Time travel, wormholes, teleportation to Mars with Barack Obama. It sounds more like the plot of a blockbuster sci-fi movie than anything else, but Basiago swears it's all true. In fact, he's built a career around these claims and even ran for president in 2016, promising to blow the lid off the government's top-secret time travel programs. He says he's got hundreds of facts and even photos to back up his story, but so far, all we've seen is that Gettysburg photo. So, what do you make of Andrew Basiago? Is he a modern-day prophet with access to hidden technologies, or is he just spinning some tall tales? Whether you believe him or not, his story is one of the wildest in the already bizarre world of time travel theories. The journalist who survived an air raid 11 years before it happened. Our next mystery is a real head-scratcher, much like the tale of RAF pilot Victor Goddard. In 1932, journalist J. Bernard Hutton and photographer Joachim Brandt were sent on what seemed like a routine assignment by a German newspaper, cover the Hamburg shipyard. The day started out just fine, typical workday stuff, until things took a sudden and terrifying twist. Out of nowhere, bombs started raining down on them. Yep, an air raid in broad daylight, right over their heads. Caught completely off guard, Hutton and Brandt scrambled for cover, ducking and dodging as they tried to escape the chaos. But before they hightailed it out of there, they managed to snap a few photos of the destruction around them. When they finally made it back to the center of Hamburg, they tried to report what they had just witnessed. But here's where it gets weird. No one believed them. There were no reports of an air raid, and the city looked just as peaceful as it had that morning. The shipyard they had just fled from, totally untouched. Determined to prove they weren't losing their minds, Hutton and Brandt developed the photos they had taken during the attack. But when the images came out, there was nothing. Just serene pictures of the shipyard, as if the whole bombing never happened. Their editor, probably thinking they'd had one too many, dismissed the story, and the incident was quickly forgotten. But then, fast forward to 1943. Hutton, now living in London, opens up a newspaper and almost drops it in shock. The headline, Operation Gomorrah, a devastating air raid on Hamburg carried out by the Royal Air Force. And the photos of the destruction, they were exactly what he and Brandt had seen 11 years earlier. So, what on earth happened here? Did Hutton and Brandt somehow glimpse the future during their 1932 visit to the shipyard? The details of Operation Gomorrah matched their memories perfectly, yet it hadn't happened until over a decade later. Was this a freaky case of a time slip where they were momentarily thrown into the future only to return with no evidence of what they had seen? Or was it all just a bizarre coincidence, a trick of the mind amplified by the chaos? Isn't it truly baffling? How could they have witnessed an air raid that hadn't even happened yet? The mystery endures, leaving us as puzzled today as Hutton was back then. From 1958 to 2006, the bizarre case of Sergei Ponomarenko. It's April 23, 2006, in the bustling city of Kiev, Ukraine. The police arrest a man who looks completely out of place, almost like he just stepped out of a time machine. He's around 30 years old, but the confusion and fear in his eyes suggests something is seriously wrong. And when he opens his mouth, things take a wild turn. He claims that just 2 minutes ago, he was living in 1958. Yes, you heard that right. This man, who introduces himself as Sergei Ponomarenko, insists he has no clue how he suddenly landed in 2006. The police, naturally skeptical, decide to check his ID. That's when things get even stranger. Ponomarenko's ID is a national card from the Soviet Union, a country that hadn't existed for over a decade by then. But here's the kicker. The card lists his birth year as 1938, which would make him nearly 70 years old. Yet the guy standing in front of them doesn't look a day over 30. Not sure what to do next, the police bring in Professor Pablo Kritikov, a psychiatrist, to interview Ponomarenko, and what a story he has to tell. According to Ponomarenko, he was with his fiancée, Valentina Kurish, back in 1958 when he spotted a UFO in the sky. Acting on impulse, he pulled out his camera and snapped a photo of the strange flying saucer. And then, poof! Time seemed to leap forward and he found himself in 2006. To back up his incredible story, Ponomarenko hands over the camera he used to take the UFO photo. The police, still unsure what to believe, pass the camera on to Vadim Pozma, a photographer in Kiev, to see if it's legit. Vadim is blown away. The type of film in the camera hasn't been made since the 1970s, yet it's in pristine condition, as if it was just taken. Vadim develops the film, and sure enough, there's a photo of Ponomarenko and his fiancée Valentina with a clear shot of a UFO in the sky. But this story doesn't just end with a bizarre photo. On April 25, 2006, just as Vadim is getting ready to share his findings with the police, Ponomarenko mysteriously disappears from the police station. It's like he vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. Determined to solve this mystery, the police track down Valentina Kurish, the woman in the photo. Now 74 years old, Valentina immediately recognizes Ponomarenko and confirms that they were indeed together in 1958. She even has the exact same photo that Ponomarenko showed the police. But wait, there's more. Valentina reveals another photo Ponomarenko gave her, one taken in 1970. And the most jaw-dropping part? She has a photo of him from the future, taken in 2050. In this photo, the Kyiv skyline is unrecognizable, filled with towering skyscrapers that don't exist in 2006. So, what's going on here? Do you have a logical explanation for Sergei Ponomarenko's story? Did he really jump through time, propelled by some unknown force? Or is there another explanation for his sudden appearance and equally sudden disappearance? With evidence scattered across decades, the truth remains as elusive as ever. The Time Traveler from 2118. Meet Alexander Smith, a man who claims to have seen a future that none of us will ever experience. According to Smith, back in 1981, while working on a top secret mission for the CIA, he was sent 100 years into the future to the year 2118. And he didn't come back empty-handed. Smith says he brought back proof, though the photo he presents is, well, let's just say it's a bit on the blurry side. The image supposedly shows a futuristic city skyline, complete with green, oddly shaped buildings and even flying cars. Smith insists that the blurriness is just a side effect of the time travel process, because apparently, even in the future, getting a clear photo is tricky. But Smith's story doesn't stop at a single fuzzy photo. He's shared some pretty vivid and, let's be honest, a bit unsettling details about the future he claims to have witnessed. For starters, humanity is facing some serious threats, with global warming leading the charge. Rising sea levels and skyrocketing CO2 levels, he warns, are the biggest dangers to our survival. Sure, this might sound like the kind of thing we hear today, but Smith adds an extra twist. By the mid-21st century, we're gonna have some extraterrestrial visitors. Yep, according to him, aliens are real, and they're planning a trip to Earth. And that's not all. Smith describes a future where humans and robots live side by side and not just as co-workers. He claims to have seen a woman walking hand in hand with a man who looked like he was part robot, hinting at a future where the line between human and machine gets pretty blurry. Of course, revealing these secrets hasn't exactly made Smith popular with the CIA. He says they're hunting him down for spilling the beans. As for his most tangible piece of evidence, the photo, it's just a copy. The original, Smith claims, was confiscated by the government. Whether this blurry snapshot is a genuine glimpse into our future or just the product of a vivid imagination, Smith's story continues to fascinate and baffle everyone who hears it. The time traveler from 2030 who passed a lie detector test. In 2018, a man known only as Noah claimed to be a time traveler from the year 2030. If that wasn't wild enough, he added that he's actually 50 years old but looks 25 thanks to age-reversing drugs. At first, his predictions about the future sounded like something straight out of a sci-fi novel, but things took a turn when Noah passed a lie detector test. Suddenly, people started paying attention, especially since some of his predictions are starting to come true. Noah's predictions cover everything from technology and space travel to global warming and politics. One of his most accurate forecasts was about the rise of artificial intelligence. He claimed that by 2030, AI would be everywhere, driverless cars would be the norm, and AI would assist in major medical breakthroughs. Fast forward to 2023 and 2024, and we're seeing AI evolve at lightning speed, just as Noah predicted. He also talked about space travel, specifically saying that private trips to Mars would be possible within a decade. While we haven't seen anyone living on Mars yet, the work being done by NASA and SpaceX makes this prediction seem more realistic, though skeptics are still waiting to see if it pans out. Noah didn't stop there. He predicted that by 2030, homeschooling would become the new normal, thanks to advances in technology and the rise of remote work and learning. Considering how much remote work and virtual learning have grown in recent years, this prediction doesn't seem so far-fetched anymore. But then there are the more outrageous claims, like flying cities powered entirely by renewable energy, where people live in a utopia free from pollution and food scarcity. And if that wasn't enough, he also said the average human lifespan could stretch to 300 years. These visions of the future have been met with a lot of skepticism, but they definitely sparked the imagination. Perhaps Noah's most controversial prediction was about the return of Donald Trump to the White House. He insists that Trump will once again hold the highest office in the United States. With Trump currently a frontrunner in the 2024 election, this prediction has certainly caught people's attention. Noah also made claims about humans discovering intelligent alien life, but when asked for more evidence, he admitted he didn't have any. Skeptics argue that passing a lie detector test doesn't prove his claims are true. It just means he believes what he's saying, even if it's all made up. After all, lie detectors only measure physical responses, not the truth. Noah even showed an X-ray of his wrist, claiming it contains a piece of time travel technology implanted under his skin. So, is Noah a real time traveler with a peek into our future, or just a storyteller with a knack for drama? As some of his predictions begin to unfold, the line between truth and fiction is becoming increasingly blurry. Whether you believe him or not is up to you. But Noah's story is captivating, especially because it's rare to find alleged time travelers whose predictions can be tested within a decade. These strange cases leave us with more questions than answers. Could time travel be more than just a fantasy? As these mysteries deepen, the line between reality and possibility blurs, making us rethink everything we thought we knew about time and the secrets it might be hiding.